4:12 local time, Strait of Hormuz. Inside the Combat Information Center of the escorting destroyer, the sonar operator leans in, eyes fixed on the acoustic display. At first, nothing seems unusual. Just the constant wash of shallow water noise, merchant traffic, distant engines, and the low rumble of tankers moving through the narrow Gulf shipping lanes. Then a new signal appears. Faint. Low frequency. Slow. Bearing 142. The operator listens again through his headset. This rhythm is different. Heavy propeller blades, evenly spaced. Not a merchant vessel, not surface traffic. Something is moving below the water. Con, sonar, possible submerged contact, bearing 142. The officer of the deck does not react right away. In the Strait of Hormuz, false contacts are common. The water is shallow, crowded, and acoustically chaotic. But then the display flickers again. A second signal appears on bearing 155, almost identical in profile. Another submerged contact, and this one is moving, gradually closing on the carrier strike group. Now the operator's tone changes. Con, sonar, second contact confirmed, subsurface bearing 155. Several heads in CIC turn toward the sonar console. Two contacts, both with diesel-electric characteristics, both moving toward the same point. The aircraft carrier at the center of the formation. Before anyone can say a word, a third signal appears, bearing 168. Another propeller pattern, another engine signature beneath the surface. Three separate tracks, three different bearings, all slowly converging. The room grows noticeably quieter. Con, sonar. We now have three possible submarines. For a moment, the words hang in the air. Three submarines in one of the tightest choke points in the region, in waters less than 40 meters deep. The officer of the deck turns toward the tactical display. Range? The sonar operator checks again. Estimated 11 nautical miles, closing slowly, speed 4 knots. 4 knots is not transit speed. 4 knots is hunting speed, slow enough to stay quiet, fast enough to maneuver into position. Inside CIC, the acoustic analysts begin working fast. Blade count, propeller rhythm, engine harmonics. Every submarine leaves its own fingerprint in the water. Within seconds, the early classification starts to take shape. Diesel-electric propulsion, large propeller diameter, heavy hull displacement. One analyst leans closer to the screen. Possible Kilo-class profile. Another technician reviews the second and third contacts. Smaller signature, could be Fateh class. Iranian submarines operating inside the strait, already within possible torpedo range. The tactical display updates again. 3 red symbols appear beneath the surface layer of the map, each one inching closer to the strike group. Above the water, everything still looks routine. Tankers move through the traffic lanes. Morning sunlight glints off the calm Gulf surface. Nothing appears out of place, but below, the geometry of a coordinated ambush is beginning to form. 3 submarines, 3 approach angles, a textbook setup for a torpedo strike. The sonar operator listens again. One of the propeller sounds fades for a moment, then returns. One submarine has shifted course by 5 degrees. Now it is pointed directly at the carrier's projected path. Inside CIC, the tactical officer speaks quietly into the comm line. Bridge, CIC. Possible triple submarine contact. Recommend anti-submarine posture. The captain receives the report without interrupting. 3 submarines, inside 11 nautical miles, converging. There is no panic, no shouting, just a brief pause, followed by a short reply. Very well. Then comes the order that changes the mood of the entire formation. Set condition 3, anti-submarine watch across the group. The response is immediate. Sonar systems move to active standby. Helicopter crews begin spinning up on the flight decks. Destroyers subtly adjust their spacing around the carrier. The protective screen tightens. But below the surface, the submarines keep moving. Slow, quiet, patient. 417. The sonar operator hears it first. A sudden metallic thud transmitted through the water, followed by the violent burst of high-speed propeller ignition. The acoustic spectrum spikes. His head snaps up. Then another launch, and another. 3 separate launch signatures, 3 different bearings, all accelerating fast. His voice cuts sharply across CIC. Torpedo in the water. A beat later. Multiple torpedoes. 4. High speed. On the tactical display, the new contacts appear like arrows racing through the sea. They are already moving faster than any submarine, straight toward the carrier strike group. 3 Iranian submarines have just opened the engagement, and somewhere in the dark water beneath the Strait of Hormuz, a lethal countdown has begun. 4:18 local time. The call echoes through the Combat Information Center. Torpedo in the water. For a fraction of a second, the room freezes. Then training takes over. Every screen shifts to torpedo tracking mode. Sonar returns flood the displays as the incoming weapons carve bright acoustic trails through the narrow waters of the strait. The first operator tracks the lead contact. High-speed propeller signature. Heavy cavitation, bearing 153, speed increasing. Torpedo 1 confirmed. Range 8,000 yards. Closing fast. Another operator locks onto the second weapon. Second torpedo, bearing 166. Similar profile. Then the third and the fourth. The picture stabilizes. 4 separate weapons launched almost at the same time from 3 different directions. The tactical officer studies the display for less than 2 seconds before speaking. Triangulated attack pattern. The submarines did not launch at random. Each boat released its torpedoes along a different vector, creating a wide triangular kill zone around the carrier's projected route. The logic is brutally simple. Force the target to evade one torpedo, then push it into the path of another. Classic submarine doctrine, and if timed correctly, extremely difficult to defeat. On the carrier's bridge, the captain gets the update. 4 torpedoes inbound, multiple bearings, the decision is immediate. Helm, hard port, 20 degrees. The massive carrier begins to respond. But a 100,000-ton warship does not turn quickly. Even with nuclear reactors driving full power through 4 shafts, momentum is enormous. The ship starts a slow arc through the water. Below deck, engineering pushes for more output. Above deck, crew members brace as the giant vessel begins to swing. But the carrier cannot outrun a torpedo. That is why the escorts are there. 419. 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers surge forward from their screening positions. USS Mason, USS Gravely. Their mission changes instantly. Protect the carrier, divert the incoming weapons, hunt the submarines. Deploy Nixie. The order flashes across both destroyers. Behind each ship, the AN/SLQ-25 Nixie decoy system drops into the water. A cable trails behind, towing a small torpedo-shaped acoustic emitter through the sea. Within seconds, it begins broadcasting a powerful artificial signature, louder and more attractive than the ship itself, designed to pull torpedoes away from real targets. Inside CIC, the tracks keep closing. Range 6,000 yards, speed 50 knots. Now the water around the strike group is alive with noise. Destroyers turning hard, decoys transmitting, active sonar beginning to pulse outward. Above the formation, the first helicopter lifts off. An MH-60R Seahawk rises from the destroyer's flight deck, rotors hammering the air as it races low over the water. A second Seahawk launches seconds later from another ship. Their crews already know the mission: find the submarines. Because the moment a submarine launches a torpedo, it gives away its position. 420. Back inside CIC, the picture tightens. The first incoming torpedo changes course sharply. Its seeker has locked onto the Nixie decoy, trailing behind one of the destroyers. Contact 1 diverting. The trace bends away from the carrier. The decoy is working. Seconds later, the second torpedo shifts as well. The artificial signature is louder, closer, and more tempting than the fading echo of the carrier's propellers. But the third weapon does not turn. Its seeker remains fixed on the original target. Con. Torpedo 3 still tracking carrier. Bearing steady. Range now under 4,000 yards. The tension rises instantly. At 50 knots, that distance disappears fast. The fourth torpedo also adjusts course, but not toward the decoy. It turns toward the carrier's new heading. The submarine crews anticipated evasive movement and programmed their weapons accordingly. Now 2 torpedoes are still chasing the carrier. The strike group continues maneuvering hard. Destroyers cut across the carrier's wake. Helicopters rush toward the launch points. Sonar systems send metallic pulses deep into the water, each ping rolling across the seabed like thunder. Searching, listening, hunting. 421. One of the helicopters gets the first solid return. A strong echo, large hull, depth roughly 400 feet. Bearing matches one of the launch vectors. The pilot banks sharply. Contact confirmed. The hunters have found their target. But below the carrier strike group, in the dark water beneath the formation, the incoming torpedoes are still closing. Range now 2,000 yards. Time to impact less than 2 minutes. Above the strike group, the first MH-60R Seahawk drops lower, barely 200 feet above the surface as it turns toward the contact. The next moments will decide everything. The helicopter cuts low across the water, its rotor wash streaking the calm surface as it races toward the suspected submarine position. Inside the cabin, the sensor operator studies the live tactical feed coming from the destroyer below. 1 contact. Large. Submerged. Estimated depth around 400 feet, minimal speed, trying to fade into the background. But once a submarine launches torpedoes, staying hidden becomes much harder. The Seahawk crew already knows the routine. Prepare sonobuoys. The rear door slides open. Seconds later, the first cylindrical buoy drops into the sea, then another and another. Within moments, a chain of acoustic sensors spreads across the water like a wide listening net. Each buoy deploys a hydrophone deep below the surface, transmitting real-time data back to the helicopter. The operator adjusts his headset. Suddenly, the ocean is no longer quiet. Propeller wash, hydraulic systems, the distant high-pitched whine of fast-moving torpedoes, and beneath it all, a steady mechanical rhythm. A submarine. Contact acquired, bearing 164. The helicopter widens its orbit. More buoys go in. The grid expands rapidly, covering the entire attack zone. Within minutes, dozens of sensors are feeding data into the strike group's network. The seafloor of the Strait of Hormuz is no longer silent. It has become a fully monitored environment. 4:22. Back near the carrier, the situation continues to evolve. Two incoming torpedoes suddenly veer off course. Their seekers lock onto the destroyer's decoys, drawn toward the stronger artificial signals trailing through the water. One passes safely behind an escort ship. Moments later, a distant underwater blast. The shockwave spreads, but far from the carrier. Inside CIC, one threat disappears. Contact one neutralized, but others remain. Another torpedo begins circling, confused, searching for a target. And one more stays locked, still tracking the carrier. Range 1,500 yards. On the bridge, the captain gives the next command. Hard starboard. The massive ship responds, slowly shifting course again. Below the surface, the torpedo's seeker struggles to keep up. Now the underwater environment is chaotic, ships maneuvering, decoys broadcasting. Sonar pulses echoing across the seabed. For a brief moment, the torpedo hesitates. That moment is enough. A Nixie decoy drifts directly into its path. The torpedo locks on and turns away. Seconds later, a distant detonation. The immediate threat is gone, but the situation is far from over, because the submarines are still out there. 4:23. Above the sonar grid, the Seahawk tightens its orbit. Inside the cabin, the pattern becomes clear. 3 submarines, one moving south, one slowing down, the third diving deeper, likely trying to hide beneath a thermal layer where sound behaves unpredictably. Primary contact confirmed. Kilo class profile, depth 420 feet. The pilot glances at the targeting display. Weapon ready. Below, the water remains calm, no visible sign of what's hiding beneath. The weapons officer flips the release switch. A Mark 54 torpedo drops cleanly into the sea and disappears. For a second, nothing. Then its engine ignites. A trail of bubbles marks its path as it accelerates downward, guided by data from the sonar grid. Inside the helicopter, 2 symbols move on the screen. Target, interceptor, distance closing. Below, the submarine crew realizes what's happening. They attempt an emergency maneuver, diving deeper, trying to blend into the uneven seabed, but the incoming torpedo adjusts instantly, tracking, correcting, closing in. 4:24, a powerful underwater shockwave rolls outward. On the display, the contact disappears. One submarine is no longer active, but 2 more remain somewhere below, and the search continues. 4:24 local time. At the surface, everything looks calm again. But inside CIC, the picture is very different. 1 contact gone, 2 still moving, both attempting to withdraw deeper into the strait. But their positions are already known, because what their crews never realized, they had been tracked long before the first torpedo was launched, 12 hours earlier. Long before the strike group entered the narrowest part of the strait, a maritime patrol aircraft had quietly flown a surveillance pattern over the region. During that flight, it deployed over 100 sonar buoys across a wide area, each one listening, each one recording. Individually, they cover small sections of ocean. Together, they form a dense underwater detection network. So when the submarines entered the strait earlier that night, they were already being heard. Their movements, their speed, their positioning, everything. Analysts could see the pattern forming in advance. 3 submarines, 3 approach vectors, a coordinated setup. Instead of reacting immediately, the strike group continued its course. Nothing changed on the surface. But below, preparations were already underway. Helicopters on standby. Destroyers tightening formation, operators monitoring every signal. So when the torpedoes were launched, the response was already in motion. Now, back in the present. The situation shifts again. 4:25, a second Seahawk arrives over the buoy field. Its crew immediately begins scanning for the remaining contacts. 1 contact moving south, speed increasing. The other slowing, possibly near the seabed. The grid already has both. Contact confirmed. The helicopter turns sharply. Below, the submarine increases speed, trying to break away. Inside, the crew knows the situation. They push deeper, faster, hoping to escape into the environment, but the tracking solution is already set. Weapon ready. Another torpedo drops into the water. Silence for a moment, then ignition. The pursuit begins. On the display, 2 symbols again. Closing. Underwater, the submarine maneuvers sharply. But modern systems don't rely on guesswork. They track, they adapt, they follow. The distance shrinks rapidly. 4:26. Another deep shockwave moves through the water. The contact disappears. 2 submarines are no longer active, but 1 remains, still moving. Still trying to get away. 4:27. Inside CIC, the display stabilizes again. 1 contact left, bearing 187, speed increasing. The submarine is running. The sonar operator listens carefully. At first faint, then clearer. Higher propeller speed, more noise, a trade-off. Speed for stealth. Above, helicopters expand their search. More buoys deployed. The grid grows wider. Every signal captured. Every movement tracked. 4:29. A stronger contact returns. Possible submarine, bearing 189, range 4 nautical miles. The submarine is deeper now, using the seabed to mask its position. But the strait is shallow, hiding is difficult. Every move leaves a trace. The tactical officer studies the display. If the submarine reaches dense shipping traffic, tracking becomes harder. The plan is clear. Follow, not strike. Maintain tracking. The helicopter turns south. The submarine accelerates. 6 knots. 8. Louder now. More visible to sensors. Inside, the crew believes they are escaping. In reality, they are being followed. 4:31. The contact continues south, fading slowly into distance, but still tracked. Above, the helicopters widen their pattern. Below, the strike group reforms. Ships return to position. The carrier resumes steady movement. No damage, no losses. The entire encounter lasted minutes. Inside CIC, the final signal fades into background noise. Contact lost. But everything has been recorded. Every movement, every signal, every decision. At the surface, the strait looks unchanged. Commercial ships continue their routes. Sunlight reflects off calm water. The strike group moves forward. But below, the evidence remains. And one message is clear. In these waters, nothing goes unnoticed. The ocean may hide movement for a time, but it never stays silent for long.